What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Bayou Bengals football. So let's get into it. So LSU right now. So let's talk about the state of the program right now. So LSU currently sits at 3-2. You know, the playoffs not really in sight anymore, or the playoffs, you know, by some people seem to be out of reach. But LSU has an opportunity against Missouri to get back on track. So Missouri is a 5-0 team. You know, Missouri, one of those weird programs that has been, you know, for the most part, everyone when you think of Missouri football, you think of an average program, but they've had some highlight years, especially under Gary Pinkel. So LSU with an opportunity, they get this win against Missouri, and you're going 4-2. Okay, you're going maybe this is, you know, is this like? Does this win come? Is this win more of a relief for the team, or is this more of a hey, we are like laser focused on getting it back on track, and this is a game we have to win and we will win, and when we do win, we are tunnel vision ahead. So LSU got a chance against a talented Missouri team to get another win on the road, or get a win on the road. A needed win, a win that, you know, certainly to keep them alive as far as not only in the SEC, but, you know, any slim playoff hopes as well. So, yeah, I was listening to Brian Kelly's press conference. Sounds like Omar Speights is doubtful. Who else is he saying? A few other guys were doubtful. But yeah, Omar Speights. You know, Speights has played okay. I think that okay is really probably the perfect word to describe his play this season. You know, he has not been spectacular by any means, but he's not been bad. Yeah. But yeah, and Chris Hilton was the other guy doubtful, and Aaron Anderson too. So yeah, slimmer depth at wide receiver now. Chris Hilton, you know, Hilton's a guy that's got to play better. Looks like he's doubtful, so he won't play in this game. But they need him to perform better. Aaron Anderson. You know, I guess what's too bad, what's honestly, you know, really misfortunate when you look at LSU football right now, is Brian Kelly talked about all these transfers and incoming freshmen this year, and he doesn't say this because he doesn't really want to put his team down, but it's unfortunate that none of these transfers has really had like a breakout season, and that is, you know, that's what we talk about. That is the downside of the transfer portal is. You're going to get the transfer portal. Sometimes you hit a home run with a Kenneth Walker or a Joe Burrow, or you know, even Burrow was before the portal. He was a graduate transfer, but you get my point. Sometimes you're going to hit a home run with the transfer, but for the most part, a lot of guys are in the transfer portal for a reason, just because, you know, they're really to say it, you know, for a lack of a better phrase, they're really not all that talented. If they were all that talented, it would work out at the program they're at. So. To me, Aaron Anderson, Swinson, Ogofu, some of these guys, you know, not to take anything away from them, they're good, solid players, but none of them have really had the breakthrough success, at least not up to this point. And then Omar Speights, you know, Speights, we talk about guys whose draft stock soars. You know, Keon Coleman, too, for Florida State. Obviously, LSU fans, we know Keon Coleman well. Omar Speights, I thought the way Coleman is performing, I thought Omar Speights could be that guy at the linebacker position, a guy that just has a spectacular season. So it appears that he's not going to be that guy. So yeah, but you know, can Speights still do some nice things for him this season? Of course. But yeah, it appears he's not going to be the go-to guy. But yeah, I mean, you know, I don't really like. I think it's way too early. I think it's crazy, and I know it's a small minority of fans. I know I touched on this in the clip yesterday. That people calling for Brian Kelly's job, I think, is ridiculous at this point. I really don't think he deserves to be fired at all. You know, this year, to me, what he did in year one, and this is kind of my rule. If you have a successful year one, I think year two. No matter what he does, Brian Kelly deserves a year three. I think if you have a successful year one, year two is guaranteed. You know, they could lose the rest of their games, and Brian Kelly would get a year three. You know, that 10-4 season and really everything that they displayed in that season, including the win against Bama, really certainly deserved a year 3. So let's talk. So Deuce Chestnut is not with the team right now. What I assume from that is, I assume Chestnut's probably going to transfer. That is all just speculation. There is not anything confirmed. But my assumption is the way that Chestnut's played. Now I think he sees the writing on the wall. He's not going to get as much playing time. What they do moving forward at corner will be interesting. Zy Alexander, to me, I think has been the most consistent guy there. Wells showed some things last game, even though he did get burnt. Did have a missed tackle that cost him some key yardage, but the cornerback position. It's a reporter asked him a question. I forgot what the first part of his question, but he asked Brian Kelly, is there just a lack of personnel on defense? And to me, if I was Brian Kelly, I don't know how he took that question internally, but if I was Brian Kelly, I would really be bothered by that question because, there's at LSU and a lot of programs, there's really never a year where there's lack of personnel. Now, for LSU, maybe you could argue that in 2020 just because that was such an exceptional loss of players. But even that year, they still had some guys. They still had Stingley. They still had who else did they have that year? They still had some guys on that team. So to me, I would really take that personally, and it's just, I guess with LSU though, we talk about, so back to the point of all the transfers that have underperformed. So if you look at LSU though, like I argue the point that why their defense should be, I simplify the point why their defense should be better. Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, just those two guys alone. To me, that's the thing. You look at a defense, you look at any team in college football, like let's say you put Harold Perkins and Mason Smith on, I don't even know, Oregon State. That, to me, Oregon State, I haven't really watched Oregon State too deeply, but I kind of know, Oregon State, they are a solid team. If you put those two guys on Oregon State, wouldn't you believe that would give a huge boost to that Oregon State defense? Wouldn't you think that would be enough to really boost that defense? To me, LSU, why Brian Kelly should take it personally is, with all the pieces they have defensively, you feel like Harold Perkins and Mason Smith are enough are enough just by the impact those two make by themselves to really have a high-end level defense that does not give up 55 points in a game and does not have multiple, at this point in the season, through 5 weeks, 6 weeks, not have multiple bad games where they have allowed a lot of scoring. So to me, if I was Brian Kelly, I would really take that personally. And, this game goes back to, you look at Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, and as following Michigan football, you look at 2019, Notre Dame lost a game to Michigan in a game where they just were completely outplayed, in a game where that really cost them a chance at the playoff. You kind of worry with Brian Kelly. I'm going to be being pessimistic here. You worry with Brian Kelly. Is he a guy who is this who Brian Kelly is at this point? If he doesn't lose in the playoffs, like the first round, and I know I'm kind of coming at him here. I'm kind of challenging Brian Kelly here, but this is a question we have to discuss. Is Brian Kelly that type of guy where if he doesn't lose in the playoff, is he dropping 2-3 games, and is he dropping 2 games where they just come out and just completely lay an egg, have a terrible performance, play bad defensively, not play down to the level of their opponent? Is that who Brian Kelly is? And I think that's why we talk about some of the vocal minority of the LSU fans that are unhappy and they're demanding that Brian Kelly should be fired. I think that is probably what they're thinking is Brian Kelly, preseason number 5, talent in place, high-end level difference makers, an offensive line that's probably the best in the country, a capable quarterback, all things in place, high-end level offense, playmakers. and we're sitting the season, and we're already through 5 games, and we may be eliminated from the playoffs. So if I told you, with all those things being thought about, those are all kind of ingredients right now of probably most likely what the vocal minority thinks or saying why Brian Kelly should be fired at this point through the season. But to me, by my opinion, for what it's worth, I guess, not that everyone cares as much, but this is my podcast. So my opinion is Brian Kelly will get this season. Next year, I don't know what, next year is way too far to project, but if he has another down season, if they're eliminated from playoff contention early in the year, you got to believe that would be a formula for a scorching hot seat. But yeah, right here, right now, LSU has a chance against Missouri, 6-point favorites. And to me, seeing LSU as 6-point favorites, that really shows the confidence that people still have in this football team. That's why I talked about on the clip yesterday. That's why I'm still so confident in this football team, is because, people still see, they are, you talk about the eye test, and the eye test can mean different things for different people. Obviously, it's an objective look at college football. It's it's how you evaluate a team through a certain person's point of view. But if you just looked at LSU, if you just watch LSU play, you get a confidence they can beat anyone. And that offensive line travels well. They have depth, fairly good depth on the offensive line. You see Zealand's Hurd do some nice things. Logan Diggs has really become a great running back. I guess I kind of have to retract that statement that none of the transfers have broke out. I guess Logan Diggs has been that guy. But to me, though, not having a guy break out, to me, Logan Diggs, even if Logan Diggs has not, not to take anything away from him, but the offensive line is so good and presents such a challenge that I think his talent doesn't really make it a whole lot better. I think if they had, to me, if they had, Whit Weeks done a nice, if they had 2019 version of Derek Stingley as a freshman on this defense in the secondary, I think that would make a huge difference. Or if they had, obviously, Patrick Peterson in his prime, or even if they had Morris Claiborne, or if they had an Eric Reed or a Craig Lawson, you feel like just one of those guys would make a big difference. I know Greg Brooks being out hurts just because Greg Brooks has played a lot of football for him, and he knows his second year in this defense, and he is a talented player. So Greg Brooks being out doesn't help. Andre Sam has been good, but he hasn't been. What's weird about Andre Sam is he kind of like at the place he was at prior. There's flashes, but there's also just it's not always consistent high end level play. But Andre Sam, he's been really solid. If you want to talk about, if you want to describe his play overall, he's been solid. But it's just he's not consistently been a true difference maker on that side of the ball, even though there has been some flashes. But yeah, Perkins has been good. You saw that sack at the end of the Arkansas game. And yeah, Ole Miss, their game plan, the way Ole Miss plays, they do have an offense that really can neutralize guys like Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith, where they can get the ball out quick. A good enough offensive line to have some protection, because that's the thing, LSU, without a true, besides Harold Perkins, without a true another elite rusher on the outside, Mason Smith, Wingo, they can rush the quarterback. They have that good of all-around talent, but Ole Miss, the way they want to get the ball out quick, it's hard for an interior defensive lineman to be, much of a true factor when they're getting the ball out quickly, and they have a mobile quarterback, a talented running back. So just getting in front of the guy enough created was a matchup problem for LSU. But yeah, I wonder. To me, I'd love to kind of go through what Brian Kelly's thinking. I watched most of his recent press conference. I wish I would have heard if someone asked him his thoughts on the playoff, about not making the play or about their playoff hopes being slim at this point. So, but yeah, I mean, to me, with how many talented teams, they would probably need a lot of things to happen, but I think they still have a shot at it. But yeah, LSU still has a case at this point to really build their resume. Alabama, Florida, they do have a chance to get some key. Texas A&M, they do have a chance to get some key wins. Continue to build that resume, stay hot. Certainly have a chance to win the SEC West Division and win an SEC title too. But yeah, offensively, LSU. I'm glad Brian Kelly acknowledges LSU has been such a strong offensive team. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, those guys have just been electric. Malik Neighbors just has done such a fantastic job of creating big plays, and once he gets in a rhythm, like I refer to it as an avalanche, he just really. Nothing is stopping him from getting yards after the catch, creating explosive plays, getting in the end zone. So Malik Neighbors has just been absolutely outstanding at the wide receiver position. But yeah, the question, when are they going to get Greg Brooks back? I'd love to see Greg Brooks out there. But yeah, you hope. I go back to, you don't always want to say the word hope, because hope is just, your hope is more of, you want to be sure. You don't always want to hope. Greg Brooks, hopefully you get him back. I guess to defend the defense, they haven't really had a week where they've had all 11 starters out there, except for, Florida State, I think, might have been the only game they've really had all their normal starters out there. Look at Spates might miss this game. Alexander didn't really play last week. I don't even know what's going on with Zay Alexander. But yeah, he was not out there much of last week. Major Burns, once again, guy that's been okay, but Burns has not really made a huge impact for this defense. But yeah, credit Brian Kelly getting Logan Diggs. Logan Diggs has really been exactly what this team has needed as far as from the running back position. So yeah, and it is fun to watch Logan Diggs run. He really can explode and burst through the hole. So yeah, I really am a fan of his game. But yeah, let's talk about Missouri. So Missouri, well-coached team, Eli Drakowitz. He has done a really good job of quietly building a strong competitive program. If you remember last year, they were competing with Georgia. So, to me, if LSU, I hope the feeling after this game is not just a relief. Like if LSU wins, hopefully it's just not a feeling of relief. Hopefully this is we just got a really good win on the road against a strong, well-coached opponent. So hopefully that is the feeling with this LSU team once if they beat Missouri. But yeah, hopefully we'll see some more of Ashton Stamps. Stamps is a good player. I think he doesn't really bring as much aggression as I thought. I think that's that's one of those things where, if he hasn't really shown it up to this point, is he ever going to display that aggression? I think he'll get a little bit more aggressive, but some guys either just do play with a tenaciousness, aggression. Not that him lacking in that area is necessarily a critically bad thing, but you would like to see a little bit more aggression. But I think Stamps has a chance to develop into a really good corner. Certainly a guy that showed the ability to cover, not only at the high school level, but as of now. So yeah, Stamps, I'll be interesting to see how much Stamps plays in this game. But yeah, a lot of questions. A lot of questions about the defense. Questions about Matt House and this defense. You don't really hear with just Brian Kelly having a press conference. You don't really hear too much from Matt House as of this point. But yeah, this is it's really if I said LSU was 3-2 at this point, even with the question marks on the defense, I don't think that I really have a hard time believing. I would say that or a hard time thinking that the defense could ever be this bad, especially for these for several games now. Someone told me, especially knowing Mason Smith was healthy in these games, except for the Florida State game, knowing Mason Smith was healthy, knowing the defense was mostly healthy, it's hard to believe that the defense has really performed this poorly. So, that's, to me, that's the thing. A couple things if they beat Missouri. Number one, does our offense continue to look like a well-oiled machine, humming along, playing effectively, and our offensive line imposing their will? That's number one. And then number two, is our defense just improved? Like, say they win this game 38-31, even if they give up 31 points, does our defense just look better? Do we get some stops? Do we get a turnover or two? That's I talked about when I previewed the Ole Miss game. I said, and Matt House has preached about taking away, creating takeaways. I don't think, did they even have a turnover against Ole Miss? That's the thing. He preaches taking the ball away, and I don't even think they created a turnover against Ole Miss. So that's the thing. This game as it played out certainly became a recipe of a game that LSU was appeared to certainly. Or appeared that they were certainly going to lose just because no turnovers, couldn't stop anything, let Jackson Dart stay in a rhythm, let them run the ball. All things Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin wants to do that LSU let them do. So that's the thing. Even with Ole Miss, LSU, the way LSU played, they played right into to Ole Miss's hands. And Brian Kelly kind of hinted this a little bit in his press conference because Ole Miss wants to. They understand they're not. I think Lane Kiffin understands that. That's been who he is throughout his career. He understands we're going to give up points, but can we run the ball on you? Can we create big plays? Can we get the ball out quickly? Can our offensive line perform at a high enough level where we have protection? All those things were going Ole Miss way, and they got just enough stops. That's really Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, who he is as a coach. His identity, his philosophy. Now he doesn't really, at least I haven't really heard him say this, but the way that they let Ole Miss play in this game really played right into Ole Miss's favor for them coming out victorious. But yeah, if I was Ole Miss, I would be really happy. It's too bad. We'll talk about Ole Miss for a minute. Ole Miss, it's too bad they lost that game to Bama. They really could be riding high after that victory against LSU. But yeah, Ole Miss sits with one loss. Yeah, the SEC West will be interesting because Bama, Bama does not have a conference loss. So, LSU I guess only has one conference loss. So the LSU Bama game. Becoming more and more important. But it goes to the point where, I talked about, LSU could be undefeated going into the Alabama game, but could that be a detriment to them? Now it appears they could have two losses going into that game. Now can they just play loose and with a nothing to lose? I think that LSU I think is a tough matchup for Alabama because not only does I think Brian Kelly at LSU is a bad matchup for Alabama because not only can LSU match up at the line of scrimmage, skill position-wise, but also they have a coach who can put up points. That was the thing a couple years ago when they were losing to Bama every year is they could match up at the line of scrimmage. They had the dudes, but they didn't have the offensive production to really move the ball. But now they have all those things in place to match up with Alabama well. So, and it's going to be certainly a must win in regards to the conference and playoff contention. So there's a lot a lot of motivation, a lot of do or die for LSU in that Alabama game. I know that's still a few weeks out, but that's certainly a game that's going to be obviously so key, like the rest of them right now for LSU, but that's going to be certainly one that's going to be so key if LSU wants to win a conference title and win a national title. But yeah, I mean, I think that with LSU, it's too bad LSU's lost a couple games because, even though there's still some Jaden Daniels Heisman rumblings, how dominant Malik Neighbors has been. You can make a case Malik Neighbors, and obviously Keon Coleman, Marvin Harrison are right there, but you can make a case Malik Neighbors has been the best receiver in all of college football. Him and Keon Coleman, I think, have been probably the two best wide receivers this season. Obviously Marvin Harrison has can really hang his hat on what he did last year, but Malik Neighbors, really based off his performance this year, has done so many strong things that he is really he's really right there in the consensus wide receiver ranks. I think he's number 4 right now. It's Harrison, Abuka 1 and 2, Coleman 3, and then Neighbors 4. So, yeah, strong, talented wide receivers at some of the blue blood schools. I think that's what makes it more fun when you got talented NFL draft wide receivers who are also play at blue blood programs like LSU, Florida State, Ohio State. I know Ohio State's producing a lot of NFL caliber receivers, but yeah, they're going to have a couple this year. But yeah, I mean, Malik Neighbors, he's just a guy that, he looks, I'm watching him warm up. Malik Neighbors just looks like a guy where he's just got that kind of that killer mindset. Like, he doesn't want to just go out, put up a nice stat line. No, he wants to get the ball. He wants to embarrass you. He wants to break tackles. He wants to get the ball and get in the end zone. And he wants to get, then he wants to do it again and again. And he wants to just cut, bludgeon you to death with, big plays and yardage. Malik Neighbors, just, you just see, even watching him in high school, some of his highlights and some of him, at camps and stuff, he just looks like a guy that's really got that killer mindset on him. So, I enjoy watching Malik Neighbors, even though I follow LSU. I really think that he is making a case as the, one of the top 1 or 2 wide receivers in the country, even though, considering at consensus number 4, I think that you feel like no one was going to challenge Marvin Harrison heading into this year, and you feel like it's going to be so hard for Harrison to move off that top spot. But Malik Neighbors and Keon Coleman, it's funny, both their teams happened to meet in week 1. Both those guys, what they've done this season has just been outstanding, and Neighbors a chance to be one of the top be a first round pick and challenge Marvin Harrison for that top spot. But yeah, bottom line, before we wrap here, hopefully the LSU defense just plays better this week against Missouri. That is, Brian Kelly, he was worried about the depth this year. I don't think depth is really a factor because they have, they have a bunch of capable guys. It's just that was just not a good performance. It's just a bad performance overall by the defense. And I understand. I think what he realizes, and I'm sure the team realizes, when you're giving up a lot of points or when you're scoring frequently and you're scoring a lot of points, you're just naturally going to give up more points because the defense is going to get more possessions. But I think the way, I go back to, Matt House and the turnovers. They did not have any turnovers in that game, did not create turnovers, not force punts. Really, I'll reiterate again, they really played right into Ole Miss's hands as far as, the lack of doing things they needed to do to come out victorious in this game. So I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning in this episode. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.